Hey guys, over the next 45 minutes, me and my friend Amir, we are two biohacking coaches. We're going to share some of our secrets for supercharging your brain and achieving this limitless focus using nootropics. For those of you who are not in the know, nootropics are brain boosting supplements and chemicals that's going to help you learn faster, remember everything, focus longer, and become super creative. It's like the movie Limitless, right? You're going to be like Bradley Cooper taking NZT-48. Now, despite being used by a majority of Silicon Valley executives, entrepreneurs, Ivy League students, people don't usually talk about this stuff openly. Me and Amir are going to spill the beans on nootropic. We're going to hold nothing back. You're going to discover the right way to use nootropics, avoid dangerous pitfalls. You'll also discover how you can tailor your own nootropic experience to achieve your executive goals. Before we get into the discussion, what you're watching is like a sanitized version of the full discussion. There's nootropic secrets that we really can't tell you openly, so drop me a line below if you're interested in getting the full recording and we'll shoot it through to you, no emails required. Hi, I'm Stephen Koh. I'm a biohacking executive coach. I've guided many middle-aged entrepreneurs and executives from all over the world to have more energy in their 40s than they had in their 20s. And with me is my friend Amir, which you see that side. He's a human potential coach and a biohacking neuromuscular therapist. Amir has helped people get out of mental and physical pain using biohacking so that they can perform at their highest level and the highest potential. So with that, I'm going to pass you to Amir. Amir, can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got into biohacking so that the audience get to know a bit about you?
Oh, thank you, Steven. So yes, I got into biohacking. I used to be an IT professional, and I was in pain. I was overweight, and I was lacking energy. And I decided like I need to change my life. So I discovered this thing called biohacking, and I started to work on my health. I lost a bunch of weight, got more energy, and I used to live in New York. Now I live in Los Angeles because I want to get closer to the biohacking community and the health and wellness companies that are out on this side and attend all the biohacking conferences and events and everything I can curate and learn because I'm like very curious and I curate all this information and then I kind of share it with clients how they can perform better, live better, be pain free, be more moving, and have more cognitive performance. And nootropics is a great way to boost your cognitive potential. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, it's a really cool subject, and it's kind of the reason I got into biohacking is actually watch the movie Limitless. So, I think you guys are in for a treat because what you're about to learn is real brain boosting experience from two biohacking coaches. So it's not like theoretical. These are lived experience from both me and Amir. We're not going to be talking about some studies about some other people. It's our own experience. So that's what we'll be covering today. We'll be covering how nootropic actually work, where to start, what supplement that gave us the most amount of boost, and how you can actually avoid some of the pitfalls that people get into, right? We want you to avoid getting in trouble by sharing you with real life lessons. Now, just before we start, I think it's important, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Amir, that we have to give you the disclaimer, right? What you're about to learn is education material. We're not here to diagnose or treat any disease or prevent anything medical nature. Talk to your physician, talk to your licensed physician and get their advice, right? With that out of the way, let me just tell you a little bit about how nootropics actually work. I'm going to give you the high level science about what nootropic is and how it works. So don't worry, I'm not going to get into in-depth discussions about neurotransmitters, reuptake inhibitors, all these buzzwords. What I will give you though is a basic understanding. Now, what I've got with me, let me just make it a little bigger for now. What I've got with me is, some nootropics. Okay, so these are real things, right? So this is alpha GPC. I've got L-theanine, I've got Racetams. I do have some pills, but the way it works, and this is just for your own understanding, nootropics is magnifying stuff that your body already produces, your brain, to achieve whether it's focus or creativity or energy that you're looking for, whatever your goal is, right? Your brain releases these things called neurotransmitters. They're messengers, they pass messages. And just think about this like magical dust, okay? So you've got this magical dust that help your brain work better. Your brain releases them naturally. Now, when you get to a certain level and you're looking to go high level, right? You're looking to be limitless, which is above average. If you're below baseline, that's not what I'm talking about. If you go up below baseline, as in you're not optimal in your health, in your energy and focus, nootropic can probably take you to baseline and you'll feel a dramatic difference. Now, if you have a healthy baseline and you want to take it up a notch, that's again where nootropic can take you as well. So depending on your starting point, your brain releases these chemicals or thing that called neurotransmitters. These magical dust gets released to send a message. Some of these messages is about helping you relax. Some of this message is about helping you get excited, energized, and to be focused. If your goal is to get more focus, you want more of the focused magical dust to stick around longer. Because what happens is, once those dust gets spread out, it stimulates your brain to create the effect you're looking for, then it disappears, right? You throw a bunch of dust into the air, guess what? They fall to the ground, they disappear. And that's what your brain is designed to do. It doesn't keep it around forever. It's going to have to go and get reduced and then it falls away. In your brain, we've got this reuptake channels where this magical dust can go through and get disappeared, right? It falls to the ground. It basically no longer have any effect. But if you do want to artificially and create this longer lasting effect, there's several mechanisms for which you need to do it. Why am I explaining this to you? I'm explaining this to you because majority of these nootropics work in a number of different pathways. There's a number of ways to keep the dust floating around longer. You can actually make more dust, right? Produce more. You can create more of the material so there's more of the dust getting released all the time. Or you can defy gravity, get rid of gravity and let them float in the air longer, right? And you might have heard of this thing called SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Reuptake sounds familiar. I just talked about that's how your brain gets rid of it. It's like gravity. It sucks it out of the air, sucks it out of your axon and dendrite communication. So it basically, think about it, falls to the ground. Now you can make more of the stuff, or you can stop it from falling to the ground, keep it around longer, right? Or you can magnify the effect, right? Increase the sensitivity of the receptor. Each of these nootropic that we will discuss work on a different mechanism. Understanding and learning about the mechanism allows you to create what's called a stack. So if you want to get focus, you can think about focused neurotransmitters, right? So epinephrine, norepinephrine for energy, acetylcholine for focus, and also lighting up different parts of your brain. You can keep those things around your brain longer, and you can keep them spreading around longer, and you can stop them from falling to the ground longer. They work on different mechanisms, and if you do all three, guess what? You get more effect. That's when you hear the word stacking of nootropic. That's what that's all about. We want to go through and talk about the different type of nootropics. Okay, there's many different types. There's 4 different types we want to talk about in order of impact, but also risk. So the first thing we will talk about is pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceutical, basically drugs, right? They're medicine, and the Racetam family, Modafinil. These are all different classes or these of drugs that people often use for nootropic. We'll talk about that, but there's risk involved in that as well. Then we're going to cover things like stacks that you can buy commercially. So these are pre-made stacks that you can think about looking into or investigating. So me and Amir is going to go have a free flow chat and sharing our experience with those things. And then you might go into specific stacks, right? So this might be L-theanine, which is one supplement. And we're going to close off with sharing a bit of background like how you can use all this information, because we're going to talk through many different layers, but then I want this to be actionable for you. Okay, so we will give you some suggestions and recommendations for how you can get started and make use of this information. And if you've got any questions, just drop us a line below. We'll look to answer them all. All right, that's enough of me blabbing on about the mechanism. I'm a bit of a nerd, but most of you are probably not nerd like me. So let's get into the actual discussion. So Amir, we want to start off with the pharmaceutical. So I think you've seen the movie Limitless as well, right? From memory.
Yeah, Limitless was a great movie, and if anyone hasn't seen it, you need to go check it out because that just shows you the potential of the human mind. I mean, it's a movie, but you can get there pretty close to feeling like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, those for few who are movie buffs, Bradley Cooper in the movie took NZT 48, which is supposed to be some wonder nootropic, right? And I still remember when he first took it, like his pupil dilated, he's open, and all of a sudden he's like writing books overnight. He's trading the stock market. He's making, billions of dollars. But then, he did have some pretty negative side effect.
Yes.
It was really
And
interesting to take that. I
and I
think a lot of
believe it
people.
was based on modafinil also.
That's right. That's right. A lot of people do not know it's actually based on a real drug, right? So modafinil is what it's based on. There's other variations of ammodafinil, and the Provigil is the brand name for modafinil. Now, can you share a bit about your experience in terms of using modafinil?
Yeah. So many years ago, I went to a doctor and they prescribed me Adderall, which is a totally different pharmaceutical drug, and I don't recommend that because it's a methamphetamine salt, and it actually changes your brain. And when you stop taking it, there are side effects. So I had this attention issue, and the Adderall did help, and it made me kind of feel more focused, but the side effects were not worth it. And I stopped taking it and went to a deep depression. And when I came out of it, I was very kind of more cautious about which, if I were ever to take a nootropic again. But I read the books, I read the studies. Modafinil is very safe, non-addictive, and it in a way it helps you feel more alert and awake. And I started using it. I started with a very low dose, the lowest dose, because I was split it in half. And what I feel is when I wake up in the morning and if I take it, I'm more alert and aware. I don't have any jitterness. Like it's not like a caffeine kind of feeling. You just kind of just feel very alert and aware. And I will get a lot of work done and be more productive. So it's definitely something to look into. Modafinil has, obviously it's not going to be like the movie, at least for me. And again, I was very cautious how much I took, so I was only taking like half the dose. I think the recommended is about 200 milligrams. So I was splitting that pill into half. So I just need, and like Steven mentioned earlier about if you're at baseline, you want just a little boost. So at that time I was at baseline. I had already, corrected my diet. I had lost weight. I was putting other things into my health. So I was at baseline. I just wanted a little boost. That's why I was taking half the dose. And it felt like it did boosted me for that day. How about you, Steven?
Yeah, it's interesting. But before I talk and share a little bit, I'm curious. Like you mentioned, with when you were on Adderall, so you obviously have some benefit. You mentioned like what was some of the benefit when you were on it, and also like when you stopped taking it, you mentioned there's some negative effect. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that experience as well?
Yes. So when I was taking the Adderall, I remember one time I was taking a martial arts class and I took a dose of the Adderall, and I could almost feel like I could see everything in slow motion. When my teacher was teaching us a move, I could see where his hand was, his foot movement. It was very similar to that movie, Limitless. And it was like, and then when I was like performing and repeating the moves, I was like throwing people left and right. I was doing a martial art that's kind of like Aikido Jiu-Jitsu. So it's almost like a mix of judo, aikido type of movements. And I was like ultra focused on the Adderall. But the dark side of Adderall is the crash. Like if you don't take it, like the next day, and I was being careful with Adderall. I was only also just taking a half a dose and every other day. And the day I didn't take it, I would just feel so tired, fatigue. And so there's that dark side of it. Another dark side with Adderall is when you take an Adderall, it's like whatever you're focusing on, you have to really guide your mind and your intention, because if you don't pay attention, you could be just texting your friend all day because you're just focused on that one thing. And Adderall is very like one way. Like it just whatever that one thing is, like cleaning your room, you'll be just cleaning your whole house. Just the only thing you're doing. So it's not really being productive. It's just like you just get launched into one direction. So uh yeah, so when I got off the Adderall, it was really difficult to get off because it was like I didn't want to get out of bed, and I just knew I didn't want to be addicted to something, so I just stopped cold turkey. And and it took weeks, maybe months to like feel normal again because there's so much brain fog that came with that. So that's why I was very cautious. If I was going to do another pharmaceutical, I was be careful. But what I noticed with modafinil, no side effects. If I stop taking it, I don't feel anything the next day. I'm fine. I'll sometimes not take it for weeks or months or even a year. and I never really had any issue with getting off of it because it's not addictive like Adderall. It's not really changing your brain that way.
Yeah, it's important. It's a cautionary tale. Like Adderall is an amphetamine, right? Just think about the amphetamine epidemic that we have around the world. So it's going to boost your dopamine so fast and so steep that when you can come back down, you're going to go way below what your normal is to the point where you feel so depressed, you feel so low, you have brain fog, you can't really function until you get your next hit. And that's what tend to create that biological dependency. It's similar to things like cocaine or anything kind of hard drug. So it's important that I know in the Silicon Valley Ivy League school, some people take Adderall as a nootropic, but like the way we think about it is not. It don't anything that's going to undermine your ability to make decisions for yourself to take ownership. In my on my page, it's not a nootropic because it takes control. Whereas biohacking is about control. It's about having the power to manipulate your mind, your body, to do your bidding, to achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. And if you take something that's going to ultimately take that control away from you, where you rely on it, I think that's where a lot of these pharmaceutical can have problem with that, right? There could be side effects. Now, in terms of, thank goodness I really haven't had to take Adderall, but what I use Modafinil for is for jet lag. So when I flew from here to New York and I was doing a training, my day's upside down. Yeah. So Modafinil was really good, and I got a doctor to gave that to me. It makes me feel like during the day when in the US, it's actually during the middle of the night in Sydney, where I'm from. So I should be tired. I should be brain fog. I shouldn't be able to function at high level, but instead I feel like I was like normal, right? Which for me was it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine that you're supposed to be having jet lag, you're supposed to be having all these problems, but you're not having anything, and even at a level that's kind of better than normal, right? So that's a thing that was interesting for my experience. But at that time, I was actually coming from a fairly low baseline. I haven't changed my habits, I haven't changed my diet, and it got me there, right? So I was using it and similar to you, Amir, I kind of broke it up into pieces. I didn't want to take any more than I have to. And same experience as you, like when I stopped taking it, there was no withdrawal. It was just, nah, I don't need it. It's not like, oh, where's my modafinil? You don't get any of that. It's a very different experience. And I think for a lot of people, that's similar. I think even David Asprey said the same thing, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But everyone's experience. This is just our anecdotal experience that we're sharing. Just so we talk about modafinil, but some people might come across this thing called armodafinil. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Amir?
So Armodafinil was created after Modafinil. So basically, when you have chemical compounds, the molecule can be a mirror image of itself. So if you have one thing that looks like this, then the mirror image of that. So the way they attaches to the receptor sites, it's the flipped image. So it's the same chemical components, the same structure. It's just from left to right, right to left. So Armodafinil is the opposite direction, but it's the same exact molecule, just in reverse. And it will attach to some people's receptor sites sometimes better than modafinil. So that's why it's recommended you take less. So like if modafinil is prescribed at 200 milligrams, armodafinil will be prescribed at 150 milligrams. So you just take less of it.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people you might see in the supplement, like for example, theanine. I'm not sure if you can see this. It says L-theanine. So that's the left, and it is the right version of the same molecule. Some things work better than others, and armodafinil happens to be another variation of the modafinil. And just because they have both the same core compound, they do work very differently. And that's why talk to your doctor if you having this focus and concentration problem, talk to your doctor because it's important to get this dosage right. Because otherwise, you could be hyper wired, like you wouldn't be able to sleep for days. And I'm not sure, Amir, have you heard that story where people were just like up all night, like they can't sleep because
I
they've
mean,
got
yes.
Yeah,
So one thing modafinil is prescribed for is narcolepsy. So narcolepsy is when people just pass out or they're just fall asleep and can't stay awake. So they're prescribed modafinil for that purpose. And yeah, so you can have insomnia. You could just be wired and just be awake. Again, it's not a feeling of like caffeine where you feel jitter. It's just awake. You're just
yeah,
alert and awake. And
yeah,
you want to sleep. Because sleep is when you're going to repair, heal. Things are gonna, you need to sleep. So it's always when I take it like super early in the morning, like maybe 6 a.m.
yeah.
because I believe it has like a 12 to 16 hour half-life, which
Yep.
means after 12 hours, half of it is now gone from your system. Then another 12 hours, another half. So you want it to kind of deplete down so you can go to sleep at nighttime. So taking it early in the morning, never take it in the afternoon because you will be up all night.
Yeah, yeah. And also there's an interesting side effect, right? You're hyper focused, so focused, you literally will be doing the same thing, like cleaning your wardrobe or cleaning your room for forever, which is I find that interesting because we think focus is a good thing, right? Like, everyone want to be more focused, but there is sometimes focus isn't such a good thing. Like you want to be able to snap out of it and do something else, but then you end up cleaning your room for the entire day because you're so kind of honed in on one thing and one thing only. So this is another thing I think for a lot of people looking into nootropic to be understanding that there's different nootropic for different purposes. And remember, biohacking is about control, is giving power to you, right? Now, if you're taking something and you don't know how it works and you end up being focused when you really shouldn't be focused, you might need creativity, which is the opposite of focus. Creativity is about mind wandering. It's about mind going places where there is no boundaries. It's not about constraining your thinking. It's about expansive thinking. So you got to use the right supplement for the right goal.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
you got to be, very careful what you're using it for. And then we talk about having the intention of what this is for.
yeah,
And you got being hyper focused all the time. It sounds like what we want, but it's not really what you want. Like I think Stephen Kotler, who does the flow research and entering states of flow, Nootropic can help you get into a state of flow. But you have to understand, you read the book, where Stephen Kotler talks about, there are times where you want to be in flow, and there's times you want to get out of flow because those that chasing that high of the flow all the time will actually make you crash. So our brains are not really designed for that. And it's life. It's yin and yang. It's light and dark. You have to find the balance and everything. So it's nice to be chasing focus, but you got to unfocus also. And creativity, it does come from an unfocus, and you just giving yourself a break to let the creativity flow. So know when to take it and when not to take it.
yeah. So would you talking about taking like in terms of giving your brain a bit of a break? I kind of thinking of cycling. So do you think it's going to be worth it for people to think about cycling the use of modafinil rather than using it every single day?
Yeah, I definitely believe in cycling. Like, and almost all of these things with biohacking, even all the other biohacks should be cycled in and out because you want to give yourself a break and see how your natural state of being. Because overall, you want to be into those states by yourself. It's like, if you're exercising to get strong, you want to use that strength naturally for things. So these are just tools to help you see what level you can get up to, and then see how you can just stay at that level without taking any supplements. Because you want to be as natural as possible. So initially, if you're not feeling well, you still want to get to feel well, get your life in order, get your diet in order. So this nootropics will give you a boost in motivation, confidence, and will give you a boost to be able to do those things. But then once you're there and you start building habits and you're becoming habitual, let's say, for example, I wake up in the morning and I drink coffee and I take a half a pill of modafinil and I set an intention to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. And I built up a habit of waking up at that early. Then once the habit is set in and you created a pattern in your brain that I am a person that wakes up at 6 a.m., I don't no longer have to take that modafinil. I'll just wake up at 6 a.m. And I've done that in the past where I've taken modafinil for a couple of weeks and just stopped. But I kept waking up at 6 a.m. because my body circadian rhythm changed. So the circadian rhythm just told me I have to wake up because it's 6 a.m. So, but the modafinil was the tool that helped me get there. And then I stopped taking the modafinil and I was still waking up at that time. So just use these as tools just to get you to the next step, and then you will just automatically be that person. So it will help you change your identity on the identity level, who you are and who you're becoming. And once you are that thing, then you don't really need the tools to do that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's quite important that we cycle things and out, that we're not, we're giving our brains a break. So we've talked quite a bit about modafinil, armodafinil, which is just one of the kind of pharmaceutical nootropics. But there's another really important family that's very popular with the biohacking community, and that's the Racetam. So here I've got the Racetam, and also this paracetam. There's different version of it. I think in the US you can just get it over the counter for memory. Is that right?
Yeah, you can buy over the counter. There was one company called True Brain, and it
Yep.
had some of the racetams in there. And
Yep.
yeah, you can buy it over the counter. It says a dietary supplement here.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your experience, and how do you find that in contrast to modafinil?
So when I took True Brain, I was studying for an exam. So that kind of really helped with memory and cognitive functioning. So I was able to like concentrate more and memorize. So paracetam is really for, I think, if you want enhanced memory for a specific task. So it's good for like taking an exam or just need something to memorize. I would probably do the racetam family, paracetam and racetam. So they call the racetam families because there's different names for them and they slightly work differently. So I think it works on the acetylcholine in your brain. So that will help with your memory and focus.
Yeah, it's I guess the Racetams for me, it's a bit of improves, and this is Dave Asprey's term because he's an engineer, so am I. Input output speed. So when I take the Racetam, my brain think quick, right? Like information I should know, I can record, and that's good and bad. I think it's great for if you're doing presentation, if you're doing Q&A, if you're answering questions, and you have a need to kind of be accelerated rate for which you input or store or access the information. I find that Racetams is particularly good for that. The downside for me is sometimes I say things I shouldn't say too fast. So like and this is the thing, when your brain is operating at a much faster pace than the average people, I find myself frustrated talking to people. It's like, come on, get on with it. Like, say it. Like, why is your brain so slow? It's not nice. And sometimes I just blurt out things that, maybe just out of frustration, and I just say something. I know, probably shouldn't say. I should probably not say that to people. That's probably a bit of a downside, is that your brain is actually operating at a much higher speed, which is good for some circumstances, but maybe not so good for other circumstances. That was kind of my experience in terms of the Racetam. Now, have you got anything that you think people should know when taking the Racetam family, or from your experience, Amir?
So one thing to be cautious about, because everyone's chemistry is different, everyone's brains are different. If you are, so it's working like again on your acetylcholine receptors in the brain. So if you already have too much, your brain just makes too much, you might get headaches, or it just may not even work. That's why they make different racetams, and it's one of those things that's trial and error to see if it works for you. And if you take it and you get a headache, then maybe you need to take less or not take that one at all. So that's something to be aware of.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, you have many different neurotransmitters. Acetylcholine is one of them, and the way you can think about it is like a flashlight. So it depends on where you point your flashlight; those regions gets highlighted. So it's very useful, right? And actually, your muscle is actually triggered through acetylcholine action. So it's not just for the brain; it's actually how your muscle contracts. It's based on acetylcholine. Now, when you have, and as Amir has alluded to, when you have too much, you're overstimulating. It can give you a headache. So this is something to be aware of, and that is probably a good segue as well, right? To go into some supplements, because what we are talking about are pharmaceuticals. They are things that's a little bit easier, or I wouldn't say tamer. They're still powerful in terms of supplement, and still need to be aware of the effect and the impact, and potentially, if you have other medical conditions, you need to make sure you speak to a physician, because we call that contraindication. What that means is you may have other things that's going on with your body that you shouldn't be taking some of these nootropics, and that's important. So we're not saying this to to cover ourselves. We're truly saying this for your own benefit. That do your research, take control, take charge, but always talk to a physician. So we will talk a little bit about pre-made herbal supplement stacks. So things like supplements like qualia. You can look at unfair advantage. So there's a few that is readily available. You can buy in Whole Foods. You can buy in iHerb and certain online retailers, quite accessible. And interesting your experience, Amir, about some of those supplements that we spoke about.
Yes, so I took qualia. Qualia was great when I was studying neuromuscular therapy and studying for my exams. Qualia really helped me to really stay concentrated and focused. And one of my exams I had to take was like 4 hours long. So I took the qualia right before the exam, and it really just helped me stay focused. I actually ended up finishing the exam earlier than the time that was given, so that was nice, and I passed, so that was really good news. And I really liked qualia, but I did notice sometimes when I took qualia, I would get headaches. So I think that was because it was just overstimulation. But for that day, I really just needed it. And I wouldn't take it every day. I would only take it on days I was studying or needed to have that focus while I had to memorize something. So qualia is a good stack, but again, it's not for everyone. You just got to kind of test it out. I also tried True Brain. That's another thing you can get. And let's see, other stacks. Like Alpha Brain, that's a popular on it, makes that one. I had pretty good results with the Onnit Alpha Brain. That really helped with if you want to focus or concentrate, get some work done. That one was a good stack.
Yeah. So after all the things you try, what do you think is the best? Would you say on it is the best one you've tried so far?
That's a hard question because I know Qualia constantly changes its formula based on the latest research. So I do like Qualia better because I feel they are constantly updating their formulas as things come out and they're lab testing everything. So I think the quality of it, and Qualia also has a lot of money invested in neuroscience. So they're constantly looking at the studies and they're constantly making adjustments. Where Alpha Brain is good, it works, but I feel like they don't constantly update that formula. Their formulas might change like once every 5 years or something.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing. And I would just try it and see what works for somebody. So there's different stacks out there. I think I tried another stack that I found on Amazon, and it seemed to be okay. Didn't really see a big difference. So yeah, it just depends on check the ingredients, try check the stack and just test it. I mean, everyone's different, so it's gonna results are gonna vary depending on the person.
Yeah. So what would you think is some of the downside of maybe using one of these stacks compared to pharmaceutical, like a single ingredients nootropic?
So some of the downsides, one of the downside is if you're gonna buy a stack, um, you have to really trust the company. I trust Qualia. I just trust that I met the scientists. I work for them. They were at the biohacking conference. I spoke with them. So I just feel like they're very authentic and they really are trying to push the science of this. Some of these other companies that are out there, you don't know if they're doing it just for the money or they clickbait stuff where they like, oh, now we include this ingredient that showed in rat studies. Well, we're human beings, like we're not rats. So, you're trying to change human brain chemistry, not rats brain chemistry. So be careful with some of the stocks that are out there making bold claims and you can't prove it. I mean, you can always try it and prove it to yourself if it works. So that's why you want to be careful and trust the company and trust what you're working with. Sometimes a herbal supplement or something that's non-pharmaceutical is not always safe. People think, oh, I can get this over the counter, it must be safe, but it may not be. It might actually be worse than a pharmaceutical. So pharmaceuticals like Modafinil and all these things have to go through all these lab testing, FDA approval. So it might be safer. And there's another category of drugs that's not related to this, but let me just give a quick example. If you get bioidentical testosterone prescribed to you from a medical doctor, it's much safer than the over-the-counter that you buy from a vitamin shop. The stuff that they're selling you at vitamin shops might actually damage your liver and kidneys more. And even though it's a natural supplement and it has herbs and whatever they're saying it's in there, or they might have, it might cause problems. So that's why you always have to be kind of careful to think that, oh, it's safer because I can buy it from the vitamin store. It may or may not be. Check the ingredients. Check what those ingredients are. That's why I trust Qualia, because they really check the ingredients. They make sure it's safe before they, distribute it and make their formulations. So over-the-counter stacks are good, and the pharmaceutical stacks are good too. So it just depends what your needs are, and I think you can kind of figure out what's good for you.
Yeah, that's a important point. Just because it's herbal does not necessarily mean it's safer than pharmaceutical, because pharmaceutical have manufacturing practices that they must adhere to. Having said that, though, a lot of pharmaceutical that we use for nootropic were actually originally created for something else. So if you talk to a doctor, this is actually off-label use, right? So narcolepsy, if you have modafinil for narcolepsy, that's what originally was created for, but using it as a nootropic, that's not technically what's used for. So I think there's but the advantage of that is much pure. You guarantee purity. Whereas a herbal thing, there's much often there are other things like lead contamination, which is a serious issue, especially with some Chinese herbals, right? So just because it's natural does not necessarily mean they're safe. And one way to tell if a manufacturer is one to choose is that, as Amir said, they regularly update their stuff. They're not fixed in it just for a quick buck. They're constantly taking new research, refine the formula, trying to get a better outcome, a safer outcome for their people. And that is generally a good sign of a reputable company. Another company that I love to use is Life Extension, and they do the same thing, right? Everyone, and biooptimizers, I don't know what you think of biooptimizers. Yeah, they also kind of update the formula and they change things, come up with new things, and update research because they care, right? They're not there just to sell a product. If it sells, they off they go, make money something else. They care. They care enough to update the formula, which for me speaks volume. In terms of the one thing about pre-made stack though, because it's not a single thing, and this is where I find that sometimes, let's say if you take one of these stacks and you have headache, you don't know which ingredient is causing that because they're not in isolation, right? It's a stack of very different ingredients that's supposed to be complementary, but because of your unique physiology, it's creating headache. It might make you wired. Maybe you can't actually think properly, or there's other different impacts. So because it's all mixed together, it's really hard to diagnose what the problem is. And then you might go from one brand to another, and then just not quite hitting the mark because it's basically it's all or nothing. You can't really tune it. There are some nootropic companies though that do tune it and create a custom version of nootropic based on your feedback. So one company I use is Nootropica. They've got this world domination formula, which is a stack of different nootropics that you can order. It's not cheap though. I think it's about $700 a month. Yeah. But what they do is they take it and they give you feedback to say, hey, do you want more of this or less of this? You give them your problems, and then they can tune it to get you the outcome that you're looking for. It's not cheap, but for those of you who is interested in a stack and don't have to work it out yourself, that is something that you might want to explore rather than buying a Qualia or Onet or these pre-made stack. That's something that you can look into, is going to some of the custom individually tailored nootropic company like Nootropica. They will do that for you. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about, I think it's a good segue to talk about individual supplements. But before we do that, have you got anything more to add about nootropic stacks and the companies that produces them?
It's everything you said. It's like, yeah, custom stacks are always the best way to go. Done for you, and they tailor it for you. But if that's too much, then you can kind of just experiment on your own. And that's kind of what we are as biohackers, right? We are going to quantify how we feel, and then if you can buy those ingredients individually and create your own stacks, and just kind of play with like, how much theanine you might need, how you can stack that with tyrosine, and buy the individual ingredients. For example, I think one of my first nootropic experience was I was making bulletproof coffee, which is the coffee butter MCT oil, and then I heard about tyrosine and theanine, so I just bought them separately, and I would take one of each, and I felt amazing. My brain just felt like it opened up. It almost felt like I was on Adderall. So, and I just found that worked for me. So, just experiment like that. So I was not paying a bunch of money at the time. I wasn't even making that much money. So I was just experimenting with individual um, supplements to see how I can customize it for myself. So that could be a way to get started.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Because having individual supplement, just one ingredient at a time, allows you to truly experience what that's meant to create for you. So, for example, L-theanine that I pointed out earlier, right? For me, it just gives me a sense of calm. Not wide, but just really kind of mellow. It's not very dramatic. It's not very obvious, and then it helps me appreciate. If I buy a stack that's got L-theanine, I know what its role is for because I felt it, and I've used it often with caffeine. Now, so if you take caffeine, well, a lot of people and some of my clients have this issue, and one of my clients said to me, when he has caffeine, he could be digging a trench all day, like hard labor work. That's all he's good for because his brain is so up there, he literally cannot think, which is interesting. If you think about caffeine, it's supposed to help you focus, but it just wired him so high as a kite, but he can't literally use his brain for anything other than menial labor, right? Just digging trenches or doing work. But adding L-theanine changed everything. It made it usable. It just mellows everything out. So he got the best of both worlds. He's got the stimulation from the caffeine, which increases epinephrine. Norepinephrine gives you energy and drive, right? And it's an adenosine blocker, so it gives you more, energy for focus. You don't feel as tired. But this mellows it out to make that sustainable and usable, that he can think properly. And that's once you understand the impact of that, then you might experiment and you can go, oh, okay, well, alpha GPC. Let me boost the amount of acetylcholine. Remember, magical dust. I want more of the things around. And choline, acetylcholine, allows you to highlight your brain. So it's actually a good generic nootropic because it helps with multiple mode of thinking. You can take this pure and then you can do creative work if that is what you choose. You can do focus work if that's what you want to do. It's not as selective, right, as in terms of the stimulation of the brain. And that's the thing, again, to try. Because once you try that, then you can go, well, maybe I need L-tyrosine because I'm just low on energy. I need a bit of a boost of testosterone, a bit of adrenaline or noradrenaline, depending on what you want to call it. And then you get to experience the energizing effect of that. Then you go, well, nicotine, right? That's another single ingredient thing you can try and see if that boosts and get the impact you have. And once you better appreciate this, what that gives you is power. It gives you knowledge. It gives you knowledge on like which stack. Well, that stack's got L-theanine, I like it. It doesn't have alpha GPC. I don't need it. It gives you more control and help you make that informed choice on what you want to do or what you want to take, right? There's other things like B12, right? Phenylethylamine, which improves your dopamine, catecholamine for energy and drive. There's a whole bunch of things, and this is where I find single ingredient is helpful. And if you're not getting impact or you're having side effect for taking those things, you know exactly what's causing it because it's the stuff that you just took. Yeah, so that I find it's particularly useful if you're really looking to tune and optimize. Now, obviously, if you talk to a biohacking coach, they can probably get you there faster rather than having you try all this. They can find out more about what you do, what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, and maybe give you a starting point and give you some educational material to short circuit your learning, right? That's, I think, for us as biohacking coaches, that's where we can help you short circuit your learning. You get the benefit of trying individual things, but you're not starting blind. You're not starting from zero. You're starting with the knowledge that we've already acquired consulting with numerous clients that we talk throughout the day. Yeah. So that is, we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered pharmaceuticals, we've covered stack, we've covered how these things actually work. We've covered why you will go into specific supplements rather than buying a stack. Now, I think that, Amir, it would be good for us to kind of wrap this up with a bit of recommendations and actions for people, right? So that our audience can think about how they can make this work for themselves. So now, if I ask you this question, what would you say to someone who's new to this world, and what advice would you give them to help them get started on using nootropics to boost their brain?
So I would say to get started, I think would be start with the single ingredient, either it be the pharmaceutical or the non-pharmaceutical, the supplement. So for example, Stephen showed the alpha GPC or L-theanine. Just start with one of those and see if you notice a difference. And another thing is sometimes with like paracetam, you might be taking it and not notice a difference. And then when you stop taking it, that's when you start to notice, oh, you're not as fast as you used to be. So it was doing something because sometimes these things are very subtle. So they don't always give you like this giant boost of energy. Some things can, right? If you take caffeine, if you take certain things, it just you feel there's something going on. But for like paracetams and some of the nootropics, it might be a subtle boost, and then as soon as you stop taking it, you just might go back down to baseline, and then you'll notice when you stop taking it. So start very slow. Just start with one ingredient, either a pharmaceutical ingredient or a non-pharmaceutical ingredient, and just see how it makes a difference. And then from there, you can add on something else. I think that would, or you can try a stack if you want to go that route right from the beginning, if you're feeling adventurous.
Yeah, that's good advice. It is important that you ease your way into it. The way I think about it is the number one thing you can do to boost your brain is to change your diet, change how you exercise, and build your baseline. But there's a place in nootropic, and once asked our mentor David Ashbury this question: what's it like? Because he said that when he first started, nootropic helped him perform. Right, he was overweight, like he was actually obese, and he was sick. He was infected with mold. He had foggy brain. And he's got arthritis. He's all kinds of issues, and some of these things was able to help him, do business school. Right, it's helping him able to perform. But what he realized is over time, once he's changed his habit, changed his lifestyle, he doesn't need these things, right? He doesn't need it on a daily basis anymore. He's able to perform at the level that these nootropics are creating for him. So I asked him, so does that mean you don't need nootropics? You never take them? And his answer was interesting. Well, see, this what nature has intended. You optimize your diet, you exercise, you rest, you sleep, right? You optimize your brain, you train your brain to master how you control your thought. But if you're looking to go above what nature has intended, that is where nootropic come in, right? So I think for anyone started in nootropic, it's important that to think about the best thing you can do is really to change your habits and then operate at a high level. Then that will take you to superhuman. But if you want that experience, just see what it could be, your potential, what your potential feels like. I think that's where nootropic, at the start, early on, can be helpful. The pharmaceutical can sometimes, depending on your country's law, can be a bit hard to get because you have to see a doctor to get a prescription. But so you might want to start with a stack just to get that feeling of what it feels like to operate at a high level. But once you get there, don't stop, right? Don't stop there, right? You're just relying on this thing to give you that baseline performance when you should be using that for superhuman performance. Okay, so I think anyone who's looking into nootropic, it's important to understand what the role of nootropic in its proper place is really used occasionally. These things can have side effects, and if you're relying on this thing to perform at a basic level, you're not really optimal in my opinion. All right, guys. So I think that we have gone through a lot of topic, and I hope that you've got something out of this particular discussion between me and my friend Amir. Now, before we go, Amir, if someone's interested in learning more about what you do, where would you go? Advise them to go to find out more about you.
They can find me at qxplife.com or find me on Instagram or Facebook with the same qxplife, and you can find me there.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll put that link in the comment below. And thank you all for your tuning in and learning about nootropic and hearing two biohackers chat about our experiences. And thank you for your attention. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.